Well, let's get this party started.
He lays traps like that. He's told you that. He says some of them.
Well, no, you just tend to make things something horrible, like because you don't know that line. So,
Yeah, because honestly, I don't know what line you're talking about.
speaking of lines, here's a bunch of them on the screen here with the best show ever, the CW tournament. So CW threw up a tournament with all their shows. And had people vote on the best show ever. Ended up being a final battle between Supernatural and Smallville, which in the end was
Donkey
won
punched.
by
Smallville was donkey punched.
won by Supernatural.
A show that premiered in 2005 and has over 15 seasons, which means it had to be running dry near the end. Still slaughtered. Yeah. By the way, it's first fatality. Oh, come on, man. You got to let me have this. I've talked about this show too much. First fatality, the biggest losing comparison in the entire chart. Batwoman at 10%. It friggin' toasty that sucker. It Like, I almost think that 10% is people clicking the wrong button. That's how bad that is. Got slaughtered.
For those that understand basketball analogy, that's a true 16-1 matchup.
It's a slaughter. I think they gave him the 10% as an error margin, man, because dang. Batwoman got assassinated. There are shows on here that we don't know what they are. That did better.
Oh, yeah, that's true, too. But actually, in my honest opinion, between all these shows, I really think the matchup for superiority was the semifinal between Arrow and Supernatural. Because if they had brought this, if I know about this bracket before the voting from the fans, my money would have been on Arrow. It has spawned off the Arrowverse, and it has a more popular fan base, not necessarily as rabid as Supernatural fans, but I think it has a broader audience. Because Supernatural has a very niche market. I mean, it's definitely in the male market, and it's in the young adult male market. So those 2-3 million fans have kept it alive for so long. But I would have thought Arrow would have won the tournament. Smallville, it was good, but I thought Arrow would have actually beaten Smallville in the head-to-head matchup on the other side.
The later seasons, dude, I think the later seasons are what were just that turning point. But here's the big thing. Even Arrow is much younger than Supernatural, though not as much as Batwoman. I mean, like I was telling Zeno, the idea of a show that started in 2019 getting slaughtered so much by a 16-year-old show is wild.
Well, and I mean, it could also be due to age demographics that tend to do surveys online. As you did see, both the end-up shows ended up being the older shows.
I think that just means they made it better back in the day, buddy. You can try.
I'm throwing in data points that people tend to point out, though. Because there are demographics for who fills out a internet survey, who visits certain sites. So it's not as good as a random surveying. You do tend to get some niches. So.
I guess so, but with Supergirl and Gossip Girl and Vampire Diaries going as far as they did, I don't think this demographic, a guess, this is not fact, this is a conjecture. I don't guess it's as old a demographic as you think because of some of the other shows that went as far as they did. But I would like to propose, not based on facts, but based on bitterness, that Supernatural and Small were the finalists because we made shows better than you guys do, you younger folks.
Well, the overall win, the over supporting, 77% to 23% win that Supernatural got at the end. Also shows, honestly, a lot of people quit voting once their show is out of the running too. I will say Smallville had a much easier victory
And
coming
still didn't
down
win by
its
a lot.
trail
Mhm.
versus Supernatural. Supernatural actually hit some fan bases that
And still slaughtered
do
them.
tend to go out there and vote. I mean, the Batwoman crowd does tend to be very vocal, so I wouldn't be surprised if that 10%, they came there to vote for Batwoman.
Oh, no, I believe that was all of them.
400,000 of them.
No, I
All
believe that was
400,000.
all of them. I believe that 10% was everybody that watches Batwoman.
Same thing with, No Legends,
The Legends is one of the Arrowverse sub ones, so yeah. I mean, I'm surprised that it almost didn't end up Legends versus Arrow, but I'm not surprised Smallville lost like it did because it barely hedged out Vampire Diaries. And from what you said, logically, if 48% of the crowd on the right side was Vampire Diaries, then there wasn't a lot of people that came back to vote for Smallville.
Yeah.
That actually makes a lot of sense. But Batgirl was fresh when it took on Supernatural and got destroyed. Like, it was back when they had the full team there.
Yeah, I mean,
and
other than
crushed.
the first one, which was an 86-14 versus Reaper, which I've never even heard of this show. Smallville had tough victories going the whole way, 68-32%, 53-47, and then
52 to 48.
and then 52-48. So yeah, it had close battles the whole way. Supernatural was overwhelming the entire
The best fight
way.
was Arrow, and it was still 76 to 24.
Yeah.
And that's the closest anyone got. But again, 2005, meaning this show is older than some of the people voting. And it's still got it.
you said 2005, but it also lasted for 15 years. Like, the show went on for 15 years.
But I mean, even to pull
Yeah,
people
but-
in that late, you're in season 8 and you got people locked down like that. That's a good show.
Oh, no, I know people who wasted a large chunk of their life starting up Supernatural near the end. And you hear about them, like, spending weeks going through all the seasons.
I sat through like 1 or 2 seasons in one sitting and I burned out because I was just like, oh my God, this is a lot of Supernatural. And what's funny is I think Blood X is the one that tricked me into starting because he was like, you should watch Supernatural. It's not that long. And then I started.
Nope. I said, give it through season 5. I promise you, give it through season 5, you'll enjoy it. The first season, it doesn't. Just like with any new show, like even Breaking Bad, the first season, it had its stumbling blocks, and it takes a little bit for the show to get its footing. Once it got its footing in season 2, then it was a lot better. The first season was the monster of the week, and then you started tying some of the different episodes together to the point of, okay, where's this going? And then you realize where it's going. You're like, oh, that's really interesting. And they did a real good job. Once they get past season 5, then it kind of got off the rails when they went to Purgatory and Leviathans and stuff. And they circled back around and did a decent job in the later years. But yeah, it's a show worth watching the first 5 seasons. But you kind of got to watch season 1 to get seasons 2 through 5.
See, the way he said it, I thought he meant there were 5 seasons. So when I got 2 seasons in, I started burning out. I was like, how many more seasons? And back then, it was like on season 13. I was like, oh, crap. This is a long show. I was like, holy God.
It was designed to be a 5-season show. That's what Eric Kripke wanted it to be. And he had written it for 5 seasons as a showrunner. But it got so popular, kept getting renewed. He's like, I'm running out of ideas, y'all. And had to get a different showrunner, then a different showrunner, to the point to where if people are going to keep watching it, and the CW is not like ABC or NBC or Fox, they're a relatively younger, smaller network, but we have millions of viewers every single time the show comes on. We're going to keep churning it out to the point to where, okay, you know what? It's really jumped the shark about 8 seasons ago. Let's go ahead and cut it off.
Yeah, they have to have something to counteract all those shows they keep that don't get any views.
And apparently now they're making a Supernatural verse. It's not a remake, but it's going to be a different show. But it's also going to be produced by Jensen Ackles, which was Dean Winchester. So they're going to be making more Supernatural-ish type content because it was so popular.
They built a world. They have room to tell a different story. And honestly, I would love to start over because it's so long. I would jump in on a new startup.
I will say, if one thing about this show, and it makes me cringe every time I see this, and I see this on so many people, and that's this one tattoo, the supernatural tattoo. So many people have the supernatural tattoo. So I have a few friends who have, yes, the supernatural. You're not the only one.
I didn't even know that.
Oh, I knew he had it. But our boy Brian, he has the supernatural tattoo. I know a few girls who have the supernatural tattoo. I mean,
now I'm looking it up.
Way too many people, man. I know the fandom. But man, the supernatural tattoo is like all over the place.
We're actually spending way too much time talking, but I did want to address two things real quick before we move on, because they did try a backdoor pilot for Ghost Facers a while back. And Ghost Facers was not the most interesting side story, so I'm like, I'm not interested in that. But the one that I was really interested in, and if you watch the first several seasons, you'll realize the origins of the gun called the Colt, which was made by Samuel Colt back in the 1800s to combat supernatural beings. They wanted to go back and actually redo the whole Samuel Colt storyline, and I would have loved to see Supernatural in the Wild Wild West. That would have been tight, but that idea just kind of fell through. But that would have been one of my more interesting kind of prequel-ish type situations. But we'll see what the new show has coming down the pipe in a year or so. I'll definitely give it a watch and see if it's worth watching. But this show, I probably rightfully won, although I was kind of surprised that it won. But it does have a very rabid fan base, especially if you look at Supernatural Con. And it's like $300 or $400 just to get a photo op with one of the actors. I mean, so they have the demand out there.
Yeah. I think they even did the supernatural tattoo in the show, didn't they? Like there was fans of them that had the supernatural tattoo in the show.
They went to this convention and they pulled up the arm sleeves and they saw the tattoos on their arms or their chest and go, yeah, we're really big fans.
Yeah.
Not realizing they were the real Dean and Sam. But later on, one of the angels burned that symbol on their rib cage because tattoos can be burned off or flesh ripped off. So now it's on their skeletal structure to where, it was pretty much there permanently at that point.
So,
but
anyway,
but yes.
You nailed it. How'd you nail it? No one nails it.